Drake Ramsay stood in the galley, hands on hips, staring at the quivering mass of what passed for their head chef's attempt at breakfast. The Vrelnian cook, a being named Quilks with 4 arms and skin like polished jade, trembled as Drake prodded the gelatinous cube with a wooden spoon. "This is raw," Drake said flatly. "But Chef Ramsay, it is meant to be served at ambient temperature." "It's raw. Do it again." Quilks's head tendrils drooped. "Yes, Chef." Drake had arrived 6 weeks ago as part of Earth's Cultural Exchange Initiative, a program designed to foster understanding between humanity and the galactic community. The Celestial Harmony was a science vessel, home to 200 crew members representing 17 species. Drake was the only human aboard, and initially the crew had treated him like a biological hazard, which, to be fair, wasn't entirely unfair given humanity's reputation for consuming things that would hospitalize most other species. Captain Tavara, a statuesque being from the crystalline worlds of Praxon, had cornered him on his first day. She crossed her upper arms while her lower arms gestured at a data pad. "Mr. Ramsay, your dietary requirements list includes something called hot peppers and mentions acids that could strip hull plating." "Yeah, lemons. Good for digestion." Her faceted eyes had flickered with what might have been horror. "We have assigned you private meal times, for everyone's safety." But Drake hadn't spent 8 years clawing his way through culinary school, another 4 working under master chefs, and one particularly brutal season on a cooking competition where he'd earned his black jacket just to eat alone in a corner like some kind of culinary cryptid. "Captain," he'd said, matching her formal tone, "I'm here to cook. If nobody eats what I make, what's the point? The point is cultural exchange, not mass poisoning. How about this? I cook something mild. One volunteer tries it. If they survive, Tavara glared. Wrong word. If they enjoy it, maybe others give it a shot. If not, I'll stick to my corner." Tavara had studied him for a long moment, her crystalline features reflecting the soft lights of the corridor. "One volunteer. I will supervise with a medical team standing by." That first tester had been a young tactical officer named Brosk, a thickly built creature from a high-gravity world who'd drawn the short straw in what his friends clearly thought was a death sentence. They'd gathered in the mess hall like it was an execution. Drake had kept it simple: seared scallops with a light butter sauce, asparagus, and wild rice. Brosk had approached the plate like it might explode. He'd picked up the fork with a hand that could crush steel, cut a tiny piece of scallop, and raised it to his mouth with the caution of someone defusing a bomb. The silence in the mess hall was absolute. Brosk chewed. His eyes widened. He chewed again. Then he made a sound somewhere between a moan and a revelation. "By the 7 suns," he whispered. He devoured the rest in what could only be described as a religious experience. The next day, there was a waiting list. Now, 3 months later, Drake ran the most popular establishment on the ship. The galley had become the social hub, with crew members timing their breaks to catch whatever he was preparing. He'd learned to adjust recipes for different biologies. Less salt for the aquatic species, more umami for the insectoids, nothing fermented for the methyler who processed alcohol like poison. His reputation had spread beyond just good cooking. Drake demanded excellence from his small kitchen staff with the same intensity he'd learned from his mentors. Quilks had initially resented the human's presence, but had slowly transformed under Drake's teaching, learning techniques that didn't exist in Vrelnian cuisine. "Taste this," Drake said, holding out a spoon of sauce. Quilks extended a tendril nervously. "It is very good, chef." "It's not very good. It's almost perfect. Add a pinch more acidity and it will be perfect. Don't settle for very good." "Yes, chef." The real breakthrough came when Drake introduced them to dessert. Most galactic species had sweet foods, but they were functional things: energy bars, nutrition cubes, the occasional fruit. The concept of creating something purely for pleasure, something that existed solely to delight the senses, was alien to most of them. Drake started simple: chocolate chip cookies. He'd saved his precious supply of Earth ingredients for this moment. The butter, sugar, chocolate chips, and vanilla extract were worth more than gold out here in the black. He mixed the dough while a crowd gathered, drawn by smells that had no equivalent in their experience. "What is the purpose of this food?" asked Dr. Yilix, the ship's chief medical officer, a serpentine being with brilliant blue scales. Pleasure, Drake said, scooping dough onto baking sheets. But surely it has nutritional value, medicinal properties. Nope, just tastes good. Yilix's head tilted in confusion. Your species creates food for no practical purpose. The purpose is joy, Doc. Not everything needs to be practical. When the cookies came out of the oven, golden and fragrant, he let them cool just enough not to burn anyone's mouth and then passed them around. The reaction was instantaneous and unanimous. Crew members who'd never agreed on anything found common ground in the miracle of butter, sugar, and chocolate. Captain Tavara had taken a bite, her rigid posture softening. This is absurd. In a good way, in the best way, humans are insane. We get that a lot. The dessert revelation changed everything. Drake's galley became less of a cafeteria and more of a cultural institution. Crew members would linger for hours, trying new things, arguing about flavors, bonding over shared meals in ways the ship's official team-building exercises had never achieved. Then Ensign Torvik came to him with a problem. Torvik was a young officer from the Rimwood territories, covered in short fur that changed color with his emotions. Currently, it was flickering between nervous yellow and embarrassed orange as he stood in the galley doorway. Chef Ramsay, might I request a private consultation? Drake looked up from the vegetable he was dicing. If this is about the recipe for those dumplings, I already told you. It is not about dumplings. Torvik's fur flashed bright pink. It is about a female. Drake set down his knife. Go on. There is a crew member, Ensign Kelara. She is brilliant, funny, and her fur patterns are the most beautiful I have ever seen. I have wanted to ask her to share a meal for months, but I fear I will ruin everything. You want me to make dinner for your first date? If you would be willing. I know it is an unusual request. Buddy, I once catered a wedding for a couple who met in my restaurant. Helping people impress each other with food is basically part of the job description. Drake wiped his hands on his apron. Tell me about her. What does she like? Torvik's first cycled through several hopeful colors as he described Kelara. Her work in astrophysics, her love of spicy foods, her habit of humming when she was happy. Drake listened, already building a menu in his mind. All right, he said. Here's what we're going to do. 3 days later, Drake transformed a corner of the observation deck into an intimate dining space. He'd convinced the captain to restrict access for the evening and spent the afternoon setting up. The view was spectacular. A nebula painted the darkness with swirls of purple and gold. He'd prepared a progression of small courses, each one designed to tell a story. Spicy roasted vegetables from Kelara's homeworld, prepared in a style she'd never had before. A delicate soup that changed color as it cooled, mirroring Torvik's fur patterns. A main course that combined flavors from both their cultures. And for dessert, something Drake had been working on. Individual molten chocolate cakes with a center that flowed like liquid stars. He'd coached Torvik on timing, on conversation, on how to really listen. The food is just the opening act, Drake had said. You're the main event. Be yourself, be present, and for the love of God, don't talk with your mouth full. From his hidden position in the service corridor, Drake watched through a small window as Torvik and Kelara arrived. He saw Kelara's eyes widen at the setup, saw Torvik's fur settle into a confident deep blue. The evening unfolded like a symphony. Each course arrived at perfect intervals, giving them time to talk, to laugh, to discover each other without the pressure of a crowded mess hall. Drake saw the moment Kelara tried the soup, and her face lit up with recognition and surprise. He saw Torvik relax as the conversation flowed. When the chocolate cake arrived, Drake held his breath. Kelara cut into it, and the molten center flowed onto the plate. She took a bite and closed her eyes. This is magic, she said. Chef Ramsay made it, Torvik admitted. I wanted tonight to be perfect. It already was. But this certainly helps. Drake smiled and quietly retreated to the galley. Quilks was waiting for him, having monitored the entire operation through the service feeds. You are very skilled at this, Quilks said. Not just the cooking. The caring. Food is love, Quilks. Anyone who tells you different is selling something. The next morning, Torvik appeared in the galley with fur that couldn't settle on a single shade of happy. Chef, she said yes. Yes to what? To everything. To another date. to being together. Thank you so much. Drake clapped him on the shoulder. You did the hard part. I just made sure you didn't do it on an empty stomach. Word of the successful date spread through the ship faster than light speed. Suddenly, Drake was fielding requests from crew members for special occasions, anniversaries, promotions, reconciliations. The galley had evolved from a place to eat into a place where life happened. But Drake's true test came during the annual Cultural Appreciation Festival. Each species aboard was invited to present something from their homeworld. The Vrelnians demonstrated their harmonic mathematics. The Praxonians grew a temporary crystal garden in the cargo bay. The aquatic members of the crew performed something that was part ballet, part physics demonstration in their specialized tank. Drake decided to throw a dinner party, not just any dinner party. He wanted to create a meal that represented Earth's diversity, humanity's strange obsession with transforming ingredients into joy. He spent weeks planning, testing, adjusting for different biologies and taste preferences. The night of the event, the mess hall was packed. Captain Tavara had given him full use of the space, curious to see what the human would create. Drake had enlisted his kitchen crew, Quilks, a nervous avian named Churek, and a methodical insectoid called Zix, to help execute the most ambitious meal he'd ever attempted. They'd spent the day prepping, and now it was time to perform. The first course was simple: fresh bread, still warm, with infused oils and spreads from around Earth. The smell alone caused a stir. Several crew members had never experienced fresh-baked bread, and watching them tear into the warm loaves with expressions of wonder made every hour of preparation worthwhile. Next came a progression of soups from different regions: a spicy Thai curry, a rich French onion, a clean Japanese miso. Each told a story of culture, of place, of humanities spread across one small planet and the flavors they'd cultivated. The main courses were a ballet of coordination. Drake had created individual plates for each crew member based on their biology and preferences, but all drawing from the same themes: roasted meats and grilled vegetables, pasta with a dozen different sauces, rice prepared in 6 different styles. Between courses, Drake talked. He explained the origins of dishes, the history of ingredients, the way food connected humans to their past and to each other. He spoke about family recipes passed down through generations, about street food vendors and fancy restaurants, about the peculiar human notion that breaking bread together made strangers into friends. On Earth, he said, stirring a reduction sauce while the crew watched on the main display, every celebration involves food. Births, deaths, weddings, victories, defeats, we mark them all by eating together. It's how we show love when words aren't enough. Captain Tavara stood near the front, her crystalline features reflecting the soft light. And the preparation, the complexity, is this common for human meals? Depends. Some humans live on pre-packaged nutrition bars. Some spend days preparing a single meal. But most of us fall somewhere in between. We cook because it's necessary, but also because it's satisfying. There's something primal about taking raw ingredients and transforming them into something greater than the sum of their parts. Raw. Several crew members shifted nervously. Drake grinned. Wrong kind of raw. I mean uncooked ingredients, not dangerously prepared food. Though I have strong opinions about that too. He plated the final main courses with Quilks's help, the Vrelnians, 4 arms moving with practiced precision. Months ago, Quilks had resented Drake's presence. Now they worked together like they'd been doing it for years. Then came dessert. Drake had saved his best Earth ingredients for this moment. He created a dessert progression that started light and built to a crescendo. Fruit tarts with pastry cream, individual tiramisu cups, and finally, his masterpiece, a chocolate soufflé that rose like architecture and tasted like velvet. The mess hall fell silent as crew members experienced the soufflé. Drake watched their reactions, saw the moment the rich chocolate hit their tongues, saw the way their eyes closed in involuntary bliss. Dr. Yilix broke the silence. I am beginning to understand why your species survived long enough to reach the stars. Any race that can create this has too much to offer the universe to be allowed to go extinct. Laughter rippled through the crowd. That's just chocolate and eggs, Doc. Wait until you try ice cream. The evening wound down slowly, crew members lingering over their plates, talking across species barriers that had seemed insurmountable months ago. Drake noticed Captain Tavara approach, her movements deliberate. "Mr. Ramsey, Captain, when you first arrived, I questioned the wisdom of the cultural exchange program. I could not understand what a chef could offer a science vessel." She picked up a small piece of bread, examined it. "I was incorrect. You thought I'd poison everyone. Totally reasonable concern. I thought you would be a distraction. Instead, you have become essential. Crew efficiency is up 18%. Interpersonal conflicts are down 32%. Requests for transfer have dropped to nearly zero." She met his eyes. "You have done something our team-building exercises and diplomatic training could not. You have made us a crew." Drake felt heat rise to his face. "I just cook, Captain. They did the rest." "You do considerably more than cook. You care. And caring, as it turns out, is contagious." She left him with that thought, returning to mingle with her crew. Drake stood in his galley, watching through the service window as species that had arrived as colleagues laughed together as friends. Quilks appeared at his shoulder. "Chef, we are running low on the chocolate supplies." "I know. Put in a request with the next supply ship. Might take a while to get here, but it's worth it." "Yes, Chef." Quilks paused. "Chef Ramsey, thank you. For what?" "For teaching me that cooking is not just about feeding, it is about connecting." Drake smiled. "Now you're getting it. Keep that mindset and you'll be better than me someday." "I doubt that is possible. Trust me. I once thought the same thing about my mentors. Then I earned my black jacket and realized they weren't trying to make me like them. They were trying to make me better than them. That's what good teachers do." Over the following weeks, Drake continued to expand his repertoire, continued to challenge his crew, continued to turn meals into memories. He taught cooking classes in his off hours, sharing techniques with anyone interested. Several crew members discovered they had a passion for it, including Churik, who turned out to have a natural talent for pastry. The Celestial Harmony made port at a way station, and Drake took the opportunity to source new ingredients. The markets were overwhelming. Thousands of species, thousands of ingredients, flavors he couldn't even imagine. He wandered through stalls with Quilks, discussing possibilities, debating combinations. "What about this?" Quilks held up something that looked like a cross between a melon and a crystal. "What's it taste like?" "Sweet, but with an electric quality, very popular in the outer systems." Drake bought a dozen and spent the next week experimenting. The result was a sorbet that made your tongue tingle, bright and alive, and completely unique. It became an instant hit. But the real revelation came from an unexpected source. Ensign Kellara, still glowing from her relationship with Torvik, approached Drake with a data pad. "Chef, I have been analyzing the molecular composition of your desserts." "That sounds ominous." "No, it is fascinating. You are creating compounds that trigger pleasure responses across multiple biological systems simultaneously. The chocolate soufflé, for instance, works on 17 different species despite them having completely different neurological structures." Drake blinked. "I just thought it tasted good." "It does, but there is science behind why. The ratios of fat, sugar, and aromatic compounds hit optimal pleasure points across a wide spectrum. You have accidentally created nearly universal pleasure foods." "Accidentally?" Kalara's fur flickered with amusement. "Perhaps not entirely accidentally. Instinct informed by expertise. But chef, this has implications. If we can understand the principles behind your cooking, we might be able to create foods that foster understanding between species. Shared sensory experiences that transcend language and culture." Drake thought about that. "So you're saying food is the universal language?" "I am saying your food might be, and that is remarkable." The conversation stuck with him. He'd always known food brought people together. That was basic hospitality. But the idea that his cooking could bridge gaps between species, could create common ground where diplomacy had failed, gave him a new perspective on his work. He started being more intentional about it. When tensions rose between crew factions, he'd create fusion dishes that honored both cultures. When someone was homesick, he'd research their world and try to recreate comfort foods. When celebrations happened, he made sure every species had something special on the table. The galley became sacred space, a Switzerland of the stomach where disagreements paused and common ground was found over shared plates. Then came the incident with the scallops. A dignitary from a neighboring sector came aboard for trade negotiations. Admiral Cross was a being of significant importance, and Captain Tavara was anxious to make a good impression. She'd asked Drake to prepare something special. Drake had planned a multi-course meal, and the fourth course was seared scallops with a citrus beurre blanc. He'd prepped everything perfectly, timing the cook to the second. But when the assistant assigned to help him that day, a nervous young crew member named Plix, plated the scallops, Drake took one look and shook his head. "These are raw." "But chef, they are translucent." "That is how you taught me." "That's undercooked translucent. There's a difference. Look at the gradient. See how the center is still completely clear. That means it's not just rare, it's raw. Send them back." "But the Admiral is waiting." "I don't care if the galaxy's Emperor is waiting. I'm not serving raw scallops. Do it again and do it right." Plix had fixed them, and the meal was a success. Admiral Cross praised the food extensively, and the trade negotiations went smoothly. But afterward, Plix approached Drake with drooping head tendrils. "Chef, I apologize for disappointing you." Drake softened. "You didn't disappoint me. You made a mistake. That's how you learn. But never compromise on quality, especially under pressure. That's when standards matter most. Even if it means making important people wait. Especially then. Respect yourself and your craft first. The rest follows." The story spread through the ship, becoming part of Drake Ramsay lore. Crew members started using raw as shorthand for anything not up to standard, always with a smile. It became an inside joke, a shared reference point that marked them as part of the Celestial Harmony family. Months turned into a year. Drake's initial 6-month assignment had been extended indefinitely. Earth's cultural exchange program considered him a massive success and wanted him to stay as long as the posting remained beneficial. Drake had no objections. The Celestial Harmony had become home. He trained up Quilks to handle most day-to-day operations, treating the Vrelnian less like an assistant and more like a co-chef. They developed a rhythm, a mutual understanding that transcended species. Quilks's natural precision, combined with Drake's creative instincts, made them a formidable team. Churrick took over the pastry section entirely, producing work that rivaled anything Drake could make. The avian had an eye for decoration that was literally superhuman, capable of perceiving color spectrums Drake couldn't see and translating that into visual masterpieces. Zix became the prep master, their methodical nature perfect for the detailed work of cleaning, cutting, and organizing. The insectoid could process vegetables faster than a food processor and with more precision. Drake's kitchen ran like a machine, but a machine with heart. Then came the day that changed everything. Captain Tavara called him to her ready room. Her crystalline features were difficult to read, but Drake had learned the subtle signs of her moods. "Mr. Ramsay, please sit." Drake sat, suddenly nervous. "If this is about the requisition for the truffle oil." "It is not. I have received communication from Earth's Cultural Exchange Office." She paused. "They are enormously pleased with your work here. So pleased, in fact, that they wish to expand the program." "Expand how?" "They want you to train other human chefs for placement on ships throughout the fleet. You would return to Earth, establish a curriculum, and prepare the next wave of culinary ambassadors." Drake felt like he'd been punched. "They want me to leave. The decision is yours. But they believe your expertise could benefit not just one ship, but hundreds, perhaps thousands. It is a significant opportunity." He sat in silence, processing. Returning to Earth meant seeing family, friends, walking on grass, breathing air that wasn't recycled. It meant access to ingredients he could only dream of out here, kitchens equipped with the latest technology, recognition for his work. It also meant leaving his crew, his kitchen, the family he'd built. "How long do I have to decide?" "They request an answer within 2 weeks." Drake wandered the ship for hours after that meeting, his mind churning. He found himself in the observation deck where Torvik and Kellara had their first date, staring at the stars. "You are troubled." Dr. Yilix had appeared beside him, silent as a shadow. "The exchange program wants me to go home, train others to do what I do. And this troubles you because I don't want to leave. But I also know that if I can train others, more crews get what we have here, more people benefit. Isn't that the responsible choice?" Yilix's blue scales caught the starlight. Responsibility is often at odds with desire. But consider this. You have built something remarkable here. But perhaps what you have truly built is a template. You have proven that a human chef can transform a ship's culture. By training others, you multiply that impact. And who is to say you cannot return after? The celestial harmony will still need to eat. Drake smiled despite himself. That's remarkably logical for someone trying to make me feel better. I am a doctor. Making people feel better is my primary function. Over the next few days, Drake talked to his crew. Quilks insisted Drake should go, that the opportunity was too significant to pass up. Churik was supportive but sad. Zik simply said, "You have taught us well. We will maintain standards." Torvik and Kelara cornered him in the galley. "Chef, you changed our lives," Torvik said. "If you can do that for other ships, other crews, you should." But it was Captain Tavara's words that ultimately decided it. "Mr. Ramsey, in my culture, we have a saying, the brightest crystal must be cut to shine in many places. You are that crystal. Yes, we will miss you. But your absence here is outweighed by your presence elsewhere. And perhaps in time you will return. But for now, I think you are needed on a larger stage." Drake made his decision. His final dinner on the Celestial Harmony was a celebration and a wake simultaneously. He prepared a meal that incorporated dishes he'd made throughout his time aboard. The scallops that started it all, the chocolate soufflé that had become legendary, the fusion dishes that had brought crew members together, and new creations made with ingredients he'd only recently discovered. The mess hall was packed. Every crew member who could attend did, and those who couldn't sent messages. Drake moved through the room, talking to people who'd become friends, saying goodbyes that felt inadequate. When the meal was done, Captain Tavara stood. "Crew of the Celestial Harmony, we gather tonight to honor one who changed us. Chef Drake Ramsey arrived as part of a cultural exchange, but he gave us something no program could mandate. He gave us community. He taught us that nourishment is more than calories, that cooking is an act of love, and that sharing a meal makes strangers into family." She raised a glass of something that sparkled in the light. "To Chef Ramsey. May his journey be smooth, his ingredients always fresh, and his return to us swift." "To Chef Ramsey," the crew echoed. Drake stood, throat tight. "I came here thinking I'd teach you about human cooking. Instead, you taught me about connection. Every species here processes food differently, sees the world differently, thinks differently. But we all share one thing: we all need to eat. And when we eat together, the differences stop mattering as much." He looked at Quilks, standing proud in the kitchen, at Churik, whose pastries had become legendary, at Zix, whose precision made everything possible, at Torvik and Kelara, still inseparable, at Dr. Yilix, at the engineering crew, at the science officers, at all the faces that had become familiar. "You've given me something I'll carry with me forever. Not just recipes or techniques, but the knowledge that food is the most basic form of diplomacy. Break bread with someone and they stop being other. They become us. That's what you've taught me. That's what I'll teach others." The party lasted into the ship's night cycle. Crew members shared stories of their favorite meals, their first tastings, the moments when Drake's cooking had transformed ordinary days into memories. There was laughter and tears, promises to stay in touch, and hopes for reunion. In the early morning hours, Drake returned to his galley one last time. Quilks was there, cleaning methodically. "You did not need to do this," Drake said. "I wanted the space to be perfect for tomorrow, for the next time you use it. You're taking over as head chef." "I know, it is terrifying." Drake put a hand on Quilks's shoulder. "You're ready. More than ready. You'll do things I never thought of, create dishes I couldn't imagine. That's what you're supposed to do. Don't copy me. Be better than me." "That is impossible." "That's what I told my mentor. Then I earned my black jacket and realized he was right. The student is supposed to surpass the teacher. That's the whole point." Quilks's head tendrils lifted, color returning. "Then I will try, for you. For the crew. For yourself," Drake corrected. "Always for yourself first. Respect your craft and everything else follows." They stood in the quiet galley, surrounded by the tools of their trade, and Drake felt a sense of rightness. This was how it was supposed to go. Growth meant change. Change meant moving forward. The next morning, Drake stood at the airlock with a single bag of belongings and a data drive full of recipes, notes, and lessons learned. The crew lined the corridor to see him off, on a guard of friends. Captain Tavara stepped forward. Chef Ramsay, on behalf of the Celestial Harmony and her crew, thank you. You will be missed. Thank you for taking a chance on a human with a reputation for calling things raw. She made a sound that might have been laughter. I believe that particular quirk served us well. Torvik presented him with a gift, a crystallized sculpture that looked like a flame created by Kelara. So you remember us, he said. I could never forget. One by one, crew members approached, some with words, some with gestures, some with simple nods of respect. Drake accepted each farewell, storing them away like precious ingredients to be savored later. Finally, Quilks, the Vrelnian's skin had shifted to a deep, peaceful blue. Chef, may your spoons always find the right depth, your temperatures always be true, and your diners always leave satisfied. That's a hell of a blessing. It is a Vrelnian chef's blessing. You have earned it. They clasped hands in the human fashion, then touched foreheads in the Vrelnian way. Understanding transcended species. Drake boarded the transport that would take him to the way station, then to Earth. As the airlock sealed, he took one last look at the Celestial Harmony, his home for a year, his school, his proving ground. The transport pulled away, and Drake watched the science vessel shrink against the stars. Inside his pocket, the crystal flame warmed against his palm. In his mind, he carried memories of laughter in the galley, the smell of fresh bread, the sight of crew members discovering chocolate for the first time. He was going home to train a new generation of chefs, to spread what he'd learned, to turn one success story into hundreds. It was the right choice. But he also knew, with absolute certainty, that someday he'd return to the Celestial Harmony. There were still recipes to perfect, still crew members to feed, still that peculiar magic that happened when different beings sat down together to share a meal. The transport jumped to faster-than-light travel, and Drake smiled. The galaxy was vast, full of beings who'd never tasted chocolate, never experienced the revelation of a perfectly seared protein, never learned that sitting down to eat together could transform strangers into family. He had work to do. Somewhere behind him, in the galley of the Celestial Harmony, Quilks was preparing breakfast for the crew. The rhythms Drake had established continued, the standards he'd set maintained, the community he'd built flourishing. And on plates across the mess hall, crew members from a dozen different worlds sat down together to break their fast, connected by the simple act of sharing food. It was enough. It was everything. And it was just the beginning.